What's up, my family? Listen, first-time listener, or you've been here the whole damn time. Hit that like, hit that subscribe, giddy up, let's go, no notes.
That's my baby. That's my baby.
We're going at it at 110%.
I just want 5 minutes of happiness, please. Just give me 5 minutes.
And they scored! They did it!
What the hell was that? Oh, yeah!
What the f*** are you talking about?
Hello there. It is Les Bowen, your host for Bowen On The Birds. Yet again, we're here on a Friday instead of a Thursday. I hope that didn't throw you off too much, but I'm just glad they still let me do this. As I've said many times, I don't quite understand why they would, but so far they haven't shut it down. So here I am. And we have a good show for you today. I think we'll be all over the Eagles-Dolphins matchup Sunday night. My first guest is Ed Barkowitz, my former colleague at the Philadelphia Daily News and the Inquirer, who's a man who wears many hats. He can do almost anything. We're going to talk about the Eagles. We're going to talk about sports betting, which is something he knows way more about than I do. I know almost nothing. And I'd like to get Eddie up here with us if we can do that. Yes, through the magic of producer Ralph Dell. There he is. How you doing, Ed?
Doing well, Lester. How are you?
I am great. Well, let's go with whatever news there is today about the Eagles. I guess I have not seen an injury report. Those usually come out a little bit later on Friday, but from practice and from what people have been saying, the assumption is that Reed Blankenship is not playing and that Bradley Roby is not playing. Everybody else seems pretty much a go. If Lane Johnson can play, that's a pretty big deal. And obviously Darius Slay playing is a pretty big. In fact, that's my agree or disagree this week, which I try to have every week, is can the Eagles win this game, or do they need the best Darius Slay to win this game, I guess? And I think they do. Not only do they need a Darius Slay, they need the Darius Slay against Tyreek Hill this Sunday night. Do you have a take on my agree or disagree?
No, I would definitely agree with Darius Slay. Les, what is your gut about Jalen Carter?
I assume he's playing. I think he's been practicing. And
I saw a limited tag with him.
Yeah,
and I understand it's tough.
Yeah.
No, the reason I bring him up, I think that not having him will be problematic if Miami is able to move the ball by the air and on the ground, and Miami can run the ball.
181.8 yards a game. As a matter.
Yeah, and a lot of that, a lot of times they'll break more than one big runs. Now they don't have Devin O'Kane playing. He's out for a couple more weeks. Right. But Raheem Mostert to me is a guy. In fact, he was probably on the practice squad when
former Eagle Raheem Mostert. Yes, that was one of those Chip Kelly era things. The Chip Kelly era is about the only time that the Eagles brought in guys who turned out to be really good players in the league, and they didn't keep them. Usually when a guy leaves the Eagles, it turns out not to be that big a deal, But with the Chip Kelly Eagles, not only did he trade away, Deshaun Jackson and LaShawn McCoy and not get enough back for them, there was Raheem Mostert, there was Jordan Poyer, who were in camp with the Eagles. Now, with Raheem, I mean, he's been around the league quite a bit. It took him quite a while to become a star, and he's had a lot of injuries. And, it's not a clear-cut, huge mistake, I guess, to have once cut Raheem Mostert. If so, it's a mistake that much of the league has made, including the team that he's playing for now, Miami. He was there once before. Right. But yeah, Raheem's team speed is such a big deal with the Dolphins, and he's right up there on that scale.
Yeah, and Mostert found his footing in San Francisco, and and boy, they could use him now. Given their injuries. I understand, both the Eagles and Miami, and I think it was a tweet that you had sent out, or an X, I guess we call them now.
Yeah, whatever it is.
about, maybe these teams are a little unproven because of who they've beaten and maybe even who they've lost to. Buffalo in Miami's case and the Jets in the Eagles case. So I hear you that it's hard to size up exactly what's going to happen. But boy, it's going to be a fast track on Sunday.
Yes.
And there's going to be no blanket ship. There's going to be some problems in the Eagles, at least some defections in the Eagles secondary. So that to me is a little problematic. I mean, the Vikings put up some points. They were garbage time points. Washington put up some points. So from another way, the over/under is 51.5, and that to me,
I think I take the over. Like yeah,
I think so too.
So I guess a lot comes down with the secondary and who plays the slot for the Eagles. It's not going to be Bradley Roby. They'll move Bradbury back outside, I guess, unless they want to play Josh Jobe out there. Against this team, I would not do that, I don't think. So it looks like, Josiah Scott, Eli Ricks in the slot. I don't think they have a great solution there for that problem.
And I'll tell you what, I mean, obviously, we see a lot of A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith around here, but what A.J. Brown does for Devontae Smith, Tyreek Hill does for Jalen Waddle. I think Waddle and Hill are as dangerous as the Eagles are going to see. And Waddle is a guy to me that presents problems. Both he can stretch the field and he can run those crossing routes. That'll turn a 10-yard catch into a 30-yard game.
We have a shout out there from Tom Arnone. Thank you, Tom. We had one just a little bit earlier that I'd failed to mention, but I'm getting quicker on the draw with that stuff. It was Frank Vespi, I believe. But so it really is a challenge for the Eagles. However, one thing I wrestle with, we're 6 games into the season, which seems like a lot, but statistically, it's not like a 17-game sample size, right? One of my points about this Miami scoring juggernaut is that 120 of their points came against the Broncos and the Panthers, who are 1-11.
Right.
And it's impressive to have scored this many points, but they scored 24 on New England. It's not like they're guaranteed to score 40 points Sunday night. And the Dolphins also have injuries that they still don't have Jalen Ramsey back. He's back at practice, but he's not going to be playing against the Eagles. And they're missing Terron Armstead, and you mentioned the running back, Archain. So, I go back and forth on this game. It could be a loss. If the Eagles play like they did last week against the Jets, it will be a loss. But if the Eagles play more like the Eagles, I'm not sure what Miami has and doesn't have. Well, I guess they'll show us. But I wanted to get into we covered the injuries here, and we covered a couple stats. You are a stat guy, I know that, and you've had some really interesting stuff, with the baseball playoffs this week.
Thank you.
Do you have anything about this game if not, we'll just move on. But if you have anything cool.
You know what? No, not about this game, because I have been looking at the baseball and the Phillies fans who were sort of slapping one another on the back after 10-0. I said, let's be careful, because momentum is only as good as tomorrow's starting pitcher.
There isn't that the Phillies proved in the Braves series that momentum doesn't exist. They came off that crushing, horrible Game 2 loss, where I was sure that the series was over, that they had blown the whole thing, and didn't lose again to the Braves. For anybody
you look at last year,
they were going to go out to Arizona and just cruise to a 4-game sweep was silly.
Right.
The way the game unfolded last night, they certainly could have won. I think that's what really hurts. It's not like Ranger Suarez got bombed or anything like that. They had a 1-0 lead in the 7th inning. Right. But, I don't see it as a cataclysmic loss. We'll see what happens tonight. I guess it could be a cataclysmic loss. But,
yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. But as it relates to Sunday, I think the thing that I'm most interested in, Les, is to see what sort of pressure they can get on Tua and how he
yes,
responds to that.
yes.
His feet and his mechanics have been very good this year in the games that I've seen.
Oh,
I
yeah.
can say that I've seen every snap. But he, when in the past, when he's been pressured, he's been not only erratic with the ball, but very generous with it as far as
Yes.
turnovers and such. So, as with just about every game from Pee Wee football onto the NFL, it's in the trenches for me. And if the Eagles can get some pressure on him, that to me will slow the Dolphins down.
Yeah, the interesting subplot here is the obvious connections between Tua and Jalen Hurts. They portray this as a very close relationship that was not at all harmed by Jalen transferring out of Alabama because Tua had beat him out as the starting quarterback. I have to wonder a little bit about that. I know I can understand not blaming Tua for the situation, but if I were Jalen, my feelings would still be some kind of way about that. I would want to show that I was the better quarterback every time I played against him. Whether he's my friend or whether he was supportive or whether we spend time together in the off season or whatever. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, kind of like how Joe Montana and Steve Young, everything was just fine there. And you know what, Young backing up Montana.
Right.
Yeah, I don't mind him being the back. Yeah, okay.
Don't mind wasting a couple years of your prime. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Les, you and I have been in enough locker rooms to know that these fellows are wired differently. And a big reason why professional athletes are professional athletes, to me, is, that difference, that edge, that competitiveness.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more about, Tua with Jalen. Jalen's he's an interesting dude, and I think he's got a lot of class.
Yes.
Particularly the way he handled the benching at Alabama.
Yes.
Didn't jump up and down. From all indications was the perfect teammate and handled it perfectly, and rewarded Alabama by playing so well in the SEC championship to get them to the national title. So I agree. I think that Jalen has got to harbor a little bit. Resentment might be too strong, but boy, I would remember that. I would remember.
Absolutely.
I mean, we're not talking Wally Pipp and Lou Gehrig here, but I would certainly remember a guy who took my job and essentially forced me to transfer to another school.
Absolutely. And I think when we talk about the Tua and the high-powered offense of the Dolphins, one thing the Eagles can do here is control the ball. Obviously, if the Eagles have the ball, the Dolphins don't, and Tua can't score any points, and Tyreek Hill is not fast when he's on the bench. So, the Dolphins' defense, nowhere close to the offense. Doesn't scare me a bit. A couple good pass rushers. But without Jalen Ramsey, I don't see this as a scary defense at all. I think the Eagles can run on them. I think the Eagles can throw on them. And it's just up to Hurts and Nick Sirianni and Brian Johnson and Devontae Smith with his hamstring to get this offense straightened out. The only guy that really seems to have his ducks in a row is A.J. Brown every week. But, we have to see something really, I think, cohesive from this group Sunday night that we have not seen really a lot in this season. We've seen fits and starts and streaks and, go out and score some points and then sit on it. And we haven't seen 4 quarters of good offense from this team. And in fact, in the fourth quarter, the Eagles are kind of a bad team in terms of scoring this season, even though they're 5-1. So I think they just need a much more consistent effort offensively than they've gotten in any game this season so far.
Now, Les, we remember the stat from last year that the Eagles offensive coordinator was the first time that Jalen had the same offensive coordinator in consecutive years since grade school. Well, now he has another offensive coordinator.
Yes,
How much of that do you think factors into this sort of sluggish start by the offense and by Jalen.
I dismissed this going into the season because there was such a close relationship with Brian Johnson, because Brian Johnson was the quarterback's coach last year. I thought, why would there be any difference? Why would there be any problem? But clearly there is. I don't know if it's just the play calling. I don't know if they needed to do more work in the offseason on design because teams really studied what they were doing. I'm not at this point sure exactly what it is, but it's not working like it worked last year. And that seems to be part of the issue to me. Absolutely. But we do have to go to commercial here, Ed. Stay with me and we'll be back with you in a few minutes.
Royal Billiard and Recreation, proudly celebrating 40 years and our new, bigger showroom.
Twice the size and twice the fun.
More pool tables by Olhausen. More dartboard sets, including custom reclaimed backboards. More bar and kitchen stools that can change a room.
And more bars, including pre-built and custom.
Hot tubs, skee ball, shuffleboard, outdoor,
and fun.
Royal Billiard and Recreation, your ultimate game room store. Now located on Bethlehem Pike in Colmar.
In our family, food is our daily bond. My nonna, affectionately called Mama by many, found solace and joy in the kitchen, sharing her love through delicious creations. She turned her culinary passion into a flourishing business alongside her husband and sons in 1983. Celebrating 40 years is a testament to our exceptional team, friends, family, and beloved customers. With gratitude, we look forward to the future, expanding our brand to share the highest quality Italian food and wine nationwide. Our heartfelt thanks to everyone who has played a part in our story. Grazie mille.
And we are back with Bowen on the Birds and Ed Barkowitz from the Inquirer these days. I knew him back when he was a young lad at the Daily News, but certainly a guy who can tell us all kinds of interesting stuff. And he's kind of my go-to guy on gambling issues. I'm really not a maven of this sort of thing. In fact, I did that on purpose. As a writer, as a beat writer, I didn't feel like, I don't gamble on sports events. I kind of felt like it would be, in some cases, using insider knowledge, So I've never bothered to learn a lot about it. I had to make picks back when I was working full time. I was terrible at it. I did at least come to understand, the setting of point spreads and things like that. But that's about as far as I go. Anything beyond that, I have no clue. Ed, you know a lot about this sort of thing. Are there any interesting betting angles to this game? And also, I wanted to ask you about the course you were teaching about sports gambling.
Yeah, as far as the game, I mean, there are props to be had. The explosion of sports betting has led to an explosion of player props. The one thing that I've learned, especially in the last 5 years since the Supreme Court ruling opened up sports betting, I'm certainly not going to bog everyone down with too much of the inside stuff, but one thing that I did learn is that the NFL is extremely difficult to beat as far as betting. The reason being is the lines are so spot on by the time the game kicks off.
Yes.
What happens is a game will start as, for an example, the Dolphins and Eagles. Or actually, last week there was a game will start off, and Team A will be -6 on Sunday night when the lines sort of open up for real. There are other lines, but Sunday night they open up for real at -6, and that line will change and evolve as the game gets closer. It could be 4.5, it could be 5, it could move. And the reason it moves around so much is because of the professional sports bettors. Mm-hmm. I was under the assumption as growing up that whichever side had most money moved the line. But that's inaccurate. $1 million could come in from me, some amateur sports bettor, because I am not a professional sports bettor. But $1 million could come in on Miami. I would bet Miami for $1 million. The sports books would take my $1 million and not move the line 2.5. not move the line from 2.5. A professional sports bettor, guy that they know, will come in and put $5,000 on a game. Well, that tells them that their line from a professional guy is off, and they may move the line. We're getting into a little funky thing with the 3, but the guy who's a professional, his $5,000 is worth more than my $1 million to the sports books, and it's all about information.
I had no idea that they really kept track of who was making the bets. That's really interesting.
Yeah, they certainly do. And one of the ugly secrets that you'll never see Jamie Foxx or Kevin Hart or Wayne Gretzky talk about in the advertisements for the sports books is the act of limiting. What sports books do is less if they deem you as a professional sports bettor and they see that you've whacked them a couple times for 5,000. Well, they will say you can only now bet 500 because we don't like the liability that you present to us. And they're allowed to say that. It's up to you to then find another, what's called an outlet, to take your business that will hopefully take your business. Now, what that also leads to then is unsavory behavior. The person who wants to bet 5,000 will then open an account in his mom's
someone else's name.
Yeah. Or go, which is, the whole reason that the Supreme Court opened this all up and all the legislators, or they will go to offshore betting, where those people are oftentimes have more palate for bigger bets from professional sports bettors. So it's opened up sports betting, and all they want, not all, I don't want to paint it with a broad brush, but 95% of the action the sports books want is from the amateurs, from you and me, who think that the is going to go over because we've seen the Dolphins put up a 70. We've seen what the Eagles can do with the weapons that they have.
Now, as far as the line on this game, I guess last time I looked, the Eagles were giving 2 points. And like everybody else in the world, I've been told that the home team gets 3 automatically. So that really means that they're really soft on the Eagles as a favorite here. What does that say to you? What does that line say to you about this game? Anything at all?
Yeah, it surely does. That they are, and I agree with you. And that 3-point thing can have a little flexibility to it. A general rule, it's okay as a general rule, but sometimes, when the Patriots were the Patriots, they were more likely to get 5 because they were at home. Or this year's Broncos might, get 2 or 1. Right. So there is some flexibility there. But yeah, the 2.5, you've seen 2, I've seen 2.5. The key though is whether that line is going to get to 3. 3 and 7 are the magical numbers in the NFL. And when you see lines moving through those 2 numbers, that is an indication of to me, the professional guys are on it one way or the other, because it's very rare that a line will go from 2.5 to 3. It does happen, but it's about the first sports book who has the testicular fortitude to go to the 3. So I think the 2.5 is just a hedge. They're expecting a lot of Miami action, I would think, because Miami has become a public team, a team that everybody loves to bet on no matter what the number is. The old greatest show on turf, the Rams were that team for years, for a few years. So there are public teams, and a lot of times the sports books try to protect themselves from the public.
That's really interesting. Very, very interesting. Now, this course you're teaching, tell us a little bit about that real quickly.
Yeah, so it's a sports betting in the media course at Rowan University. The great Neil Hartman, who is is in charge of the sports media class. He asked me to come in and teach it. And basically, what it is, Les, is I have a group of 18 students, and Neil is like a lot of us sports writers who know what the point spread is, but maybe don't know beyond that. And that was okay for us, for you and I and our generation of sports bettors, sports writers, because there wasn't the sort of focus on sports betting that there is now. The next group, the next generation of sports writers, traditional sports writers, needs, if you ask me, needs to have a foundation, needs to have an understanding of what sports betting is. The example of being limited, what a sharp is. And it's not, my course does not teach, I do not teach how to be a better bettor, because the grind is too much. These guys spend, the great quote, I had a professional sports bettor come in and talk to the class, and he said, sports betting demands all of your time and then ask for a little bit more. Because the difference between 52% and 54% is massive for these guys.
Oh, yeah.
And you have to hit 52.5% to stay even. So teaching them a lot about that, teaching about past scandals. I was a little disturbed when one of my students said, I've never heard of Pete Rose. Oh, that God. Was. So then I know. So it's we've all heard, and it's maddening. Well, I don't know who Muhammad Ali is. He was born 40 years after him. Well, good Lord, you do know George Washington is, I hope.
Right.
So anyway, it's a way. This is hopefully giving them a foundation that will help them as they grow into traditional sports writers. When things come up, they'll at least have an understanding and maybe even be able to speak to it.
Very, very interesting, Eddie. Well, I'm going to let you go here and go about your Friday afternoon in your palatial lair. And I really appreciate you coming on with me. Good luck with the course. And do you have a prediction for us for Sunday night?
I like Miami, and I like some points. Jalen Waddle is to get over 6 catches at plus 145. That's something I'm looking at. But unlike real quick, if I can, I'm with you, Les. When I was in locker rooms and covering teams and covering games, I would never bet on those just because it just felt it didn't feel right.
It feels wrong. And you don't want it to influence your writing. If you're losing money because this guy dropped a pass, that's not the way you're supposed to approach the job.
Exactly. So I mean, covering the things, you see some things. But it just felt terribly unethical to ever, even if it's $20 on a game, that's not what we're there to do.
Right, exactly.
And
thank you so much for being with us today, Eddie. And
absolutely,
have
Les.
a great weekend.
You too, buddy. You know how to get me if you need me.
All righty, thank you. So next up here on Bowen on the Birds, we have Hal Habib from the Palm Beach Post. I've known Hal a very long time. When he was at the Miami Herald and I was at the Daily News, we covered some Olympics together, some hockey playoffs, some things like that. And now Hal is at the Dolphins practice facility. He covers the Dolphins. And Hal, are you coming up this weekend or not?
I am packing my winter coat, and I will be on a flight at noon tomorrow, and looking forward to some brotherly love.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be an interesting game, Hal, and I certainly think a lot of people around here think the Dolphins are in a better position right now than the Eagles are. Of course, both teams do have injuries, but the Eagles' injuries seem pretty daunting for this particular game. With their 2 best safeties are going to be out, and they're down to like their 4th or 5th slot corner right now. And they don't like that against a team like Miami. That seems unfortunate.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, Miami is just putting up all kinds of numbers, and they're looking so dangerous at wide receiver. They're tearing apart teams that are intact, let alone teams that have those injuries. So it'll be interesting to see how Miami does against them. It's, despite what may be going on with the Eagles secondary, it's going to be a tight game. I don't see either team running away from this one.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. Hal, we have to go to commercial here real quickly, and then I want to keep you on a little bit on the other side if you have a moment. I do have some other things I want to ask you about.
Absolutely.
In our family, food is our daily bond. My Nonna, affectionately called Mama by many, found solace and joy in the kitchen, sharing her love through delicious creations. She turned her culinary passion into a flourishing business alongside her husband and sons in 1983. Celebrating 40 years is a testament to our exceptional team, friends, family, and beloved customers. With gratitude, we look forward to the future, expanding our brand to share the highest quality Italian food and wine nationwide. Our heartfelt thanks to everyone who has played a part in our story. Grazie mille.
And we're back. I'm Les Bowen. This is Bowen on the Birds, and there's Hal Habib from the Palm Beach Post from sunny South Florida. Hal, I want to ask you about Mike McDaniel. I don't know the guy at all, but I keep reading his quotes, and he just seems like a fascinating guy to cover. I've never covered a coach quite like that. It seems like it would be great fun to cover a coach that thoughtful, that offbeat. What is it like? How is he to you guys?
He is, I guess the best way to explain it is whatever you think he might be like to cover, that's what he's like to cover. His quips when he's behind this podium where I am right now, a lot of one-liners, a lot of insight. It's interesting because just a couple of hours ago, someone asked him a fairly innocent question. I think it was related to just how much he appreciates his job. And he went on for a couple of minutes talking about how he came from, not the wealthiest upbringing. And he was reflecting on, okay, what if I had all this money when I was a kid? Would I appreciate it? And he compared that to what he went through in his younger days and now as a head coach in the NFL. And, he didn't come out and say, I'm making X million a year or anything. But you could see in his words and in the emotion as he talked about it, how much he appreciates the fact that he can come out here and address us in this room a few times a week. And more importantly, coach those 53 guys on Sundays. He never lost sight of that. And that's to his credit. And he can identify with players really, really well. And they appreciate that from him.
That's really cool. Hey, what about his offense and all the motion? I'm not an X and O guy, and I don't expect you to draw diagrams here, but two very different concepts of offense, both of which have been very successful, will be on display Sunday night. Nick Sirianni was asked about that today, and he pretty much said, because Nick has been taking some heat around here because the Eagles do not use a lot of motion. Nick sort of said, yeah, I really love what they do. They do it beautifully. It's amazing, but this is not what I was taught. And the important thing with any offense is just to do it. If everybody does what they're supposed to do and you do it well, you can run a bunch of different types of offenses and be pretty good. And the fact that they run a lot of motion doesn't make their offense, intrinsically better than anyone else's. It's their talent and their the plays that they call and things like that, rather than just the fact that they use a lot of motion. But having watched this offense more closely than I have, the Dolphins offense, what's the key to it, you think? What really makes it go?
I'm afraid I'm going to sound a little bit like a coach, but I think it's all of the above. I think it's McDaniel and his creativity, along with offensive coordinator Frank Smith. I think it's the fact that they have a very unique guy outside in Tyreek Hill. They have a second guy who's equally fast on the other side, Jalen Waddle. They have incredible speed at running back as well. If you look at the miles per hour numbers, like the top 5 or 6 are all Dolphin players. And that speed is something that defenses are having a hard time coping with. And combine that with the shifts in the motion they use, and especially, when Tyreek goes in motion and guys have to follow him, he's got that essentially a head start. He's a lot of times when the snap occurs, he's a half step or a full step ahead of the guy who's trying to cover him in man. And, once you're a half step behind Tyreek Hill,
yeah,
you may as well be 50 yards behind him. So all of that is going for them. And likewise, right now I'm writing a story about, believe it or not, Miami's offensive line. Now, what have we written about Miami's offensive line for the past 10 or 20 or 100 years? How crappy they are. Well, guess what? They're performing really, really well now. And you put it all together, and that's why they're putting up points at a record pace. Like, I talked to Kurt Warner about a week ago, and he was the one who brought up in the conversation before I could the comparisons between Miami's offense and the greatest show on turf.
It's certainly an apt comparison, I would say. Yeah. What did happen, though, in that Buffalo game? I didn't watch it. I saw the final score, and I saw some of the quotes. What was the difference in that game?
The difference was they played in Buffalo, and usually when they go to Buffalo, I think it's 10 out of the past 11 trips now, they lose.
So they're cursed.
Said that. I'm sorry?
It's the Lake Erie effect or something.
It's all of that. I mean, last year, the interesting thing is they lost by 3 points, and then in the wild card game, also by 3. They did not have Tua in that game. They started a rookie quarterback, Skylar Thompson, and still gave the Bills a game. And so now, the fact that they lost in Buffalo again, it would have been a little bit of a statement game had they won that, but they do get the Bills in the regular season finale down here. So that's their chance to even the score. I look at this not only Sunday night against the Eagles, but also coming up on November 5th in Germany against the Chiefs. Those are 2 really big statement games for Miami.
Oh, yeah.
How much have they improved? Are they who we think they are, to borrow from Dennis Green? And I probably would put even more emphasis on Sunday night because it's in Philly. It's not at a so-called neutral site.
Yeah, those European games are very hard to predict. So usually one team is unaffected by the whole thing, and another team just really has problems with it.
Right. And the Dolphins have talked a little bit this week about sort of the what's a gentle way of describing the Philly fans? Les, help me out here.
Well, I think they're really on top of it. I mean, they have a reputation. They're not going to be, jumping down out of the stands and beating people up or anything, but they revel in being loud. They revel in being, passionate one way or the other. It's a very different setup, I think, than South Florida. There aren't as many people here who are, moved from other places. Mm-hmm. These are people whose grandparents took them to Eagles games. It's just a different feel to it. I mean, in football, the crowd definitely makes a difference sometimes. But really, I think most good teams can play in almost any environment. I think the Phillies have gotten a lot of publicity out of that this postseason because baseball usually isn't like that. Mm-hmm. The atmosphere they've managed to create there is very atypical for the sport. Whereas in football, I think you have loud crowds a lot of places, Yeah. And I'm not deprecating the Eagles fans or anything, but I'm saying I don't think the Dolphins are going to encounter anything that they haven't ever. Most of them played in big time college programs. They've been in stadiums that were hostile before. But it is going to be, people are going to be very excited. It's a big, with the Phillies in the playoffs and the Eagles doing well, sports is in South Philly is really on right now. And I think it'll be like you said, a close and really interesting game, Hal. I'm going to have to let you go and move on to our next guest. I really appreciate you taking time. I know you're in the middle of your workday out there, and it was great talking to you again. Good to see you. You're looking great, and good luck this weekend with everything.
Great talking with you, Les, and let's hope for a great game as we all expect. It should be a whole lot of fun.
Absolutely. Thank you, Hal Habib. And we're going to go now to Phil Sheridan, my former colleague at the Inquirer. There he is, Phil.
Hey there.
Yes. How you doing? All right. I'd recognize you anywhere.
It's good to see you, and also good to be seen, because last time I was on, couldn't get the camera working. Trouble today, but here we are. For better or worse.
The camera is working, and you're looking great. So
thanks. Liar.
Have you been keeping up with the Eagles this season? I know you were a longtime beat writer and columnist who has been very close to this team in the past. Are you still interested?
The Eagles? Well, I know they're supposed to do one more reunion tour. Oh, not those. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've been watching. I pretty much watch every game. It's like an addiction. You just can't. You think you're out,
right?
As Al Pacino once said. I've been watching them and reading all the coverage and trying to stay on top of things. I may have missed a, practice squad move here or there, but generally I'm kind of on top of it. Yeah.
So my agree or disagree question this week is: I think the Eagles not only need Darius Slay out there Sunday night, but they need him to be Darius Slay. They don't, not with a balky knee or anything, but 100% Darius Slay, or they have no hope of beating this team.
Oh, I think I would agree. 100% agree. Disagree question? Yeah, that's almost not even a question. The big challenge for them. All things being equal, is that the Dolphins just have this explosive offense and amazing speed. And on defense, certainly the Eagles, no, they don't really have amazing speed. They have some good players, certainly, but most of their strength, based on how they built the team, is up front, and that's where they put their energy. So Slay is probably the best hope they would have to even have a shot at dealing with Tyreek Hill, and nobody else. When you look at the names, I mean, they're in big. It's a big problem for them that Reed Blankenship is hurt, and and Reed's a solid player, but he's not exactly a guy that strikes fear into people's hearts as a defender, as a defensive back. We've seen a lot of those in Philadelphia over the years, but we're not. Yeah. I don't think he's one of those guys. So they're going into a kind of a tough. I mean, what they need to do is play better on offense, hold on to the ball a little bit, and put some points on the board.
Yeah, I know you've seen a lot of different situations with quarterbacks and offenses. It has surprised me this year. And I was talking about that a little bit with an earlier guest. I didn't think there would be much of a transition with Brian Johnson, because he was the quarterback's coach last year, and he's known Jalen Hurts literally all of Jalen Hurts' life. But there's been a transition, and it hasn't been comfortable. Jalen hasn't looked comfortable. The offense hasn't run the way I expected it to run. To me, it's very. If I were an Eagles fan, I'd be incredibly frustrated, because they have these incredible weapons, and they don't ever seem to put four good offensive quarters together in any game against anybody. And you get a lot of, defenses are taking this away from us, and defenses are taking that away from us. This offense should be dictating to the defenses. There should be an answer for almost anything. If you're trying to go to Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert should be open if Devontae Smith isn't. It seems like they're just sort of like, okay, nothing's working, let's throw it to A.J. Brown, seems to be the default mode of this offense. And there's just too much talent, too much money for them to be as hamstrung and as, whiffy and up and down as they've been. How do you see it?
I agree with pretty much everything you said there. I think with Brian Johnson, I think a learning curve is, something you would expect and can accept to see it happening. But, this week after the first loss of the season, when the offense really wasn't looking good or operating very well, he sounded like every bad offensive coach, or I shouldn't even say bad, but unsuccessful offensive coach we've seen pass through Philadelphia. And there have been a few. And we can go back to Ted Marchibroda and Rich Kotite and people like that. And that's I'm not hanging names like that on Brian Johnson yet, but he's saying the things that they said. Run pass. The run pass ratio is that's not really I don't really look at that, because it's not that There's a lot of passes that are sort of like runs. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that people say when it's not working, and it's right now it's not working. I mean, they just didn't run the ball the other day, and you have to do that. And from Andy Reid on, we've had coaches who say, you know, it's run first, pass first, and then run when you got to lead. But, you know, you have to be able to do it, even if you're not doing it all the time. The defense has to at least know you can and will. And the Eagles have been really good at it. With Nick
the larger problem last week, I thought, Phil, was that they weren't running it very well. That their stats didn't turn out to be horrible only because Jalen Hurts had some good rambles. The stats for the running backs were horrible. And, you know, it was hard to find running situations when you're running for 1 yard. You know, you're in long yardage situations all the time. And I don't know. I wasn't as big on that point as some people were after that game. I just think their offensive line didn't do the kind of job that it's supposed to do. And Lane Johnson's injury had a lot to do with that, but it just wasn't in passing or running. I just didn't think they got the kind of play up front that they needed. Phil, we're going to go to commercial here one more last time. And I want you to come back on the other side if you don't mind, and we'll talk some more.
You bet.
Hats.com is the premier destination for quality and fashion-forward hats and more, with designs for every style and trend. Locally based and run by Philly sports team fanatics, Hats.com can help you elevate your hat John. Utilize the easy-to-use guides at Hats.com to find your perfect size and style, and shipping and returns are free. Hats.com. Find yourself in a hat. Use code Philly for 15% off your order. Hats.com.
Royal Billiard and Recreation, proudly celebrating 40 years and our new, bigger showroom.
Twice the size and twice the fun.
More pool tables by Olhausen. More dartboard sets, including custom reclaimed backboards. More bar and kitchen stools that can change a room.
And more bars, including pre-built and custom.
Hot tubs, skee ball, shuffleboard, outdoor,
and fun.
Royal Billiard and Recreation, your ultimate game room store. Now located on Bethlehem Pike in Colmar.
We're back. I'm Les Bowen. This is Bowen on the Birds. That's Phil Sheridan over there, looking very relaxed on a Friday afternoon. Phil, there's a topic I wanted to get into with you that I find really interesting. There have been a couple pieces written lately. One of them was by our former colleague, Mike Sealski. Another one was in The Athletic about Philly fans. And the proposition is that Philly fans are kind of a kinder, gentler bunch these days than they used to be. And people are using the Trey Turner experience as an example of this, which certainly I did not see that one coming, you know, giving a guy a standing ovation who was playing horribly after signing a big free agent contract and then it turning his whole season around. Now my feeling on the Trey Turner thing is this is exactly what Philly fans love. Not giving a standing ovation to a guy who's playing bad, but the fact that when they did this, the guy suddenly became a great hitter again, which to me is just totally implausible. If I saw it in a TV show or a movie, I would laugh, you know, but that's what happened. And I think Philly fans love to believe that they have an effect on what's happening on the field in any sport. And here they are with this perfect, you know, embodiment of that with this Trey Turner thing. I mean, he goes around telling people that the fans made a huge difference. Are the fans really any different, though, Phil? What do you think?
I think they are somewhat. You know, I know. What's that?
How come?
I think it's a combination of things, really. I think, you know, we're into a new generation of human beings. I mean, you and I are not kids anymore, or less, but there are kids out there still, and they're, you know, it's a new group of people.
Yeah.
And they, you know, we have a bunch of people who didn't grow up, you know, or spend their young adulthood, you know, listening to angry, screaming idiots on talk radio, blaming everybody for everything, holding everybody accountable because of every mistake or failure that everybody has, and ginning up this intense animosity. We don't have that anymore. These people grew up on social media. These people grew up, on the internet. They grew up getting different points of view, seeing things in different places. They know everything that's going on around sports everywhere. So they know teams in other cities, lose games and their coaches make mistakes. And it's not just Philadelphia. If you listen to certain radio stations in the 90s, you would think that, Philadelphia was just this cursed place. And in some ways we became that. We became a cursed place because I know that I've covered games over the years, and I'm sure you have too, where you could actually feel the tension that the fans were creating, like the animosity, the anger in the stands it did affect players. I do believe, Eagles and Phillies certainly, and even Flyers and Sixers, like just, when you feel that much animosity directed toward the home team, it's an advantage for the visiting team. And that happened a lot of times over my career watching these games. And so it seems like, maybe the reverse turns out to work too. If you're positive, and you're supportive, and you're, go Trey. I mean, I thought Trey Turner was going to get murderized by the fans in this town during the first half of the season, and I think he deserved it because even in this postseason, he's made a couple of fielding mistakes that were just you don't make. I mean, a guy that good, getting paid that well, should be able to field a ground ball. So he's had real problems. But hey, if all that animosity and pressure and anger can be a negative effect, then maybe this works too. And right now, the Phillies are riding that wave, that momentum wave.
Right.
And the whole country is talking about how great it is to play baseball in Philadelphia. That's a change.
It is. It definitely is. But what you said about the change in generations, I'll go back even more. I think we're a long way now. There's the people that are buying tickets to the Phillies now were not there in 1964.
Right. Oh yeah.
And when you talk about the Philly teams and a history of futility, generally you're not talking about the last 30 years with any of these teams. Now, Flyers, you could argue, yes, because they won those 2 Stanley Cups in 74 and 75, but the Flyers have had very good teams. They've been to the finals a couple times. They're horrible right now. Well, not right now, but they're in a rebuilding phase right now. But there are plenty of Flyer fans that have good memories from growing up and watching the Flyers and Eric Lindros and all that. As Sixers, haven't been the worst team in the league, haven't been the 1973 team, in a long time. They did have the ridiculous Sam Hinkie era, but they got out of that, and they're a competitive team. And the Phillies and the Eagles, we could be looking at the Phillies going to the World Series 2 years in a row. How mind-boggling is that? If you could, talk to Phil Sheridan of 1990 and tell him that the Phillies were about to go to the World Series 2 years in a row, it's just a different world. It's not. The history is so vastly different. They haven't been a bad team more than 1 year or two here and there this century.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the Phillies may be going to the World Series for the second year in a row for the second time in 15 years. I mean, 08-09, they went to the World Series and they even won one, which is these are things that don't happen in Philadelphia. If that's the mindset that I grew up with, certainly. I mean, when the Phillies won, I was in high school when in the 1980 World Series happened.
Right.
And, I was well into my sports writing career when the 2008 World Series happened. So, I mean, I lived like a whole life. I raised children. I changed jobs. I bought a house. I mean, all the things that people do, and you go through your whole life. And then, and now they're back, and and I haven't aged that much more since the last time. But hey, if they win it this year, then they basically have equaled what the 2008-09 team did.
Right.
2 World Series, 1 championship, and that was the best stretch of baseball in Philadelphia's Phillies history
ever.
Yeah, I'm not talking about the Athletics because I don't remember it back that far, but they had some pretty good years. But yeah, it is very.
And you can say the same for Eagles fans. It's the days of Joe Kuharich and year after year, decade after decade of being one of the worst teams in the league. That most people haven't experienced that.
No, it's totally. And the crazy thing about the Eagles, as I think about it, is, really this all kind of began when Andy Reid came. Because if you look around the NFL, I mean, I watch games. I'm sure you do too. You're watching a game on a Sunday. I don't even know what game is going to be on. I just flick it on because I know there's a game on. Right. And I can usually watch almost any NFL game and see 2 or 3 people that I covered who were Eagles assistant coaches or Eagles players. I mean, D'Amico Ryans is a head coach. Yes. We covered him as a player. Yeah. And now he's a head coach. I mean, he never really
was a good head coach. Yeah.
Yeah. He was never a coach here, but I mean, he was a player here. And, Mike Caldwell is a defensive coordinator. All of Andy's assistants, that coaching tree is amazing. I mean, they're just everywhere. So, you watch a game and, Doug Peterson's coaching against Sean McDermott. And, it's like, this is other teams used to have that. And I used to cover, we'd go to a Super Bowl. The Eagles had no chance to be in, and we'd go to there and we'd talk to coaches and try to figure out, how does this organization work? How do they do this? Because the Eagles can't do it. And now the Eagles are the team that you would go to a Super Bowl and say, so how do you guys do this? I mean, Andy Reid was successful. I mean, Chip Kelly was obviously an aberration. Doug Peterson won a Super Bowl, and Nick Sirianni. So 3, out of 4 coaches took them to Super Bowls. I mean, Andy had a really long tenure, so it was only 1 Super Bowl, but that's a successful franchise. And so there you go. I mean,
I agree. Phil, before we go here, I need one more thing from you. It's I'd be remiss if I didn't bring this up. Sunday night, the Eagles will be wearing Kelly green uniforms. Now, I'm a little disappointed because you remember the 2010 opener, they wore Kelly green uniforms.
Yes, I do.
And I thought those uniforms were perfect. They kind of harked to Tommy McDonald and Chuck Bednarik, and they were very elegant, classy. Instead, they've decided, and this is another reflection of changing generations, that a classic look would be the look of the early 90s, which to me is not a classic look at all. And I don't like it nearly as much, but I know that it's Kelly green of some sort. And a lot of fans are just excited about that. And they certainly are excited about the memories of, Reggie White and Randall Cunningham and all those guys. In fact, I think Reggie White's son is going to be at the game. There'll be some kind of thing with him, honorary captain or something like that. How are you on the Kelly green?
I covered those teams. I was a beat writer in the mid 80s and became a columnist in 87 or so. So but I was at every game in those years with Reggie and Randall and Seth Joyner and Mike Quick and Fred Barnett and just everybody. And I like them, and I'm happy to see them worn. I mean, I'm fine with it. I think, to me, the ironic thing about the Kelly green stuff, this whole phenomenon, is that Jeff Lurie came in and said, we're changing this, and went to these new, more modern looking colors and stuff that everybody every expansion team over the last 30 years has done, has colors that are very, modern looking.
Modern,
teal and all this stuff. And, so Kelly green is, it's bright. It's, I like it, but I think it's fascinating that Jeff Lurie took it away and then waited 30 years and now he's selling it back to us, And people are lining up to give Jeff Lurie their money because of he's giving them back something he took away from them 30 years ago.
That is an excellent point. But I think you probably heard the same thing I heard, Phil, was that it was more who Jeffrey was married to at the time, that Christina didn't like the Kelly green. And Jeffrey has a different wife these days.
Well, no, I think I know that at the time he was giving Christina credit because this was her vision to modernize the way the team looked. But she could not have done any of that if Jeff didn't also want to.
Oh, yeah.
So it was Jeff I mean, he may now want to make it look like, oh, it was my shrew of an ex-wife that
yes.
Christina was not a shrew. She was a nice lady.
Oh no, I don't think so either. No, that was
saying.
what people said, was that it was her thought.
I mean, and she may have said to Jeff, gee, we bought this team and look at them. They look like, they look like a beer league team out there. Yeah. But I don't know. I'm happy to see them. It'd be interesting to see like Randall playing against Dan Marino Sunday night. But I think we have a pretty good Jalen Hurts and Tua.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because we've got to go here. But real quickly, give me a prediction for Sunday night.
I think if the Eagles have a chance to win, and they do, it's gonna have to be a pretty high scoring game, and they're gonna have to put some points on the board. So because it's home, I think Eagles, I would say 31-28 in that range. But Eagles, 4 touchdowns on each side, and whatever other points will make the difference. I think that's what you're looking at. And if the Eagles don't have that kind of score, they're gonna get killed. They're gonna get blown out. Because
I agree with you 100%. I think my score is like 33-31, but I agree with you 100%, Phil. I appreciate you doing this, and I'm forever in your debt. And long live the Ruddles. And, and thank you again. And that is it for this week's Bowen on the Birds.